Right now, millions of people believe they are thinking their own thoughts. They scroll through social media, choosing what to like, what to share, what to believe. They feel completely in control of their minds. But what if this feeling of conscious control is the greatest illusion of our time? The human brain processes 11 million pieces of information every second. Yet we can only consciously handle about 40. This means 99.9% of what shapes our decisions happens below the surface of our awareness. We live in a state of thoughtless consciousness, aware, but not truly awake. Consider this. You walk into a store and buy a product you never planned to purchase. You felt like making a choice, but did you really choose? Or did the placement of items, the lighting, the music, and 1,000 other invisible factors make the choice for you? This is not about conspiracy theories or hidden controllers pulling strings from dark rooms. This is about something far more disturbing: the systematic engineering of human behavior that happens in plain sight, accepted by billions as normal. Life. We call ourselves the most intelligent species on Earth, yet we hand over our most precious asset, our ability to think, to algorithms, advertisements, and ideologies without even noticing. We have become conscious beings who have forgotten how to be conscious. The ancient Greeks had a word, anthropos, meaning human being. But they also understood something we have forgotten. True humanity required more than just biological consciousness. It required awakened consciousness, the ability to see beyond the immediate, to question what seems obvious, to think about thinking itself. What you are about to discover will challenge everything you believe about your own mind. We will journey through the mechanisms that turn conscious beings into unconscious actors, playing roles they never chose in a script they never read. The stakes could not be higher. In a world where information flows faster than human comprehension, where artificial intelligence shapes human thoughts, and where the line between reality and manipulation blurs daily, understanding the paradox of thoughtless consciousness becomes a matter of survival. Your mind is the final frontier of freedom. But first, you must understand how it has been occupied without your knowledge. Edward Bernays understood something profound about human nature in 1928. The nephew of Sigmund Freud realized that people could be controlled not through force, but through their unconscious desires. He called it the engineering of consent. What he created would reshape civilization itself. Bernays did not just sell products. He sold ideas, behaviors, and entire ways of thinking. When he wanted women to smoke cigarettes, he did not advertise tobacco. Instead, he hired suffragettes to march in parades carrying torches of freedom, cigarettes that symbolized independence and equality. Sales skyrocketed overnight. The genius was simple, yet terrifying. He bypassed rational thinking entirely and spoke directly to unconscious emotions. Women did not choose to smoke because they analyzed the benefits of tobacco. They chose to smoke because smoking had become unconsciously linked to their deepest desires for freedom and self-expression. This was not manipulation as we usually understand it. This was something far more sophisticated, the creation of reality itself. Bernays understood that humans do not respond to facts. They respond to the stories those facts tell about who they are and who they could become. Fast forward to today. Every screen you look at, every notification you receive, every piece of content you consume has been designed using psychological principles that would make Bernays weep with joy. The difference is scale. What once influenced thousands now influences billions simultaneously. Social media platforms employ teams of neuroscientists, behavioral economists, and addiction specialists. Their job is not to inform you or entertain you. Their job is to capture and monetize your attention by triggering unconscious responses you cannot control. They have mapped the neural pathways of human desire and built machines to exploit them. The like button was not created to spread positivity. It was designed to trigger dopamine release, the same chemical response involved in gambling addiction. Every notification sound, every red badge, every endless scroll has been engineered to keep you unconsciously engaged while your conscious mind believes it is simply staying connected with friends. But social media represents just one layer of this architecture. The news you consume has been filtered through algorithms that show you information designed to confirm your existing beliefs while triggering emotional responses that keep you watching. You think you are staying informed, but you are actually being programmed. Political campaigns no longer try to convince voters through rational argument. They use micro-targeting to deliver personalized emotional triggers based on psychological profiles built from your digital footprints. You receive messages crafted specifically to activate your unconscious fears and desires, while believing you are making informed political choices. Even the physical spaces around you participate in this unconscious influence. Supermarkets place milk at the back of the store, not for storage convenience, but to force you to walk past hundreds of other products, triggering unconscious purchasing decisions. The music, lighting, and even the scents are calibrated to influence your behavior without your awareness. Shopping malls use architectural psychology to create environments that discourage rational decision-making. They remove clocks and natural light to distort your sense of time. They play specific frequencies of music that increase spending. They use color schemes that trigger particular emotional states. Universities and schools have become part of this system as well. Students are taught what to think through standardized curricula designed to produce compliant workers rather than critical thinkers. The format of education itself, sitting passively while receiving information from authority figures, trains young minds to accept rather than question. This is the architecture of unconscious influence. It surrounds us so completely that we mistake it for reality itself. We believe we are making conscious choices while algorithms, corporations, and institutions guide our decisions through invisible psychological strings. The most disturbing part is not that this system exists. The most disturbing part is how naturally we accept it, how completely we have forgotten that human consciousness was once capable of something more. Your brain is not designed for the modern world. Evolution shaped human consciousness over millions of years to handle immediate, physical threats in small tribal groups. Today, that same brain must process a flood of abstract information from a globalized digital civilization. The result is predictable, systematic malfunction disguised as normal thinking. Neuroscientist Daniel Kahneman identified two systems of human thinking. System 1 operates automatically, relying on patterns, emotions, and unconscious associations. System 2 requires effort, logic, and conscious analysis. Here lies the crucial insight. System 1 handles 95% of your daily decisions, while System 2 believes it is in control. When you see a news headline that triggers anger, System 1 has already formed an opinion before System 2 has time to analyze the facts. When you scroll through social media, System 1 responds to visual and emotional cues, while System 2 constructs rational explanations for irrational reactions. You feel like you are thinking, but you are actually just experiencing automatic responses. Brain imaging studies reveal something unsettling. When people make purchasing decisions, the areas associated with rational analysis remain largely inactive. Instead, the limbic system, responsible for emotion and survival instincts, lights up like a Christmas tree. We literally shop with our reptilian brain, while our conscious mind creates stories to justify unconscious impulses. This explains why facts alone cannot change minds. When confronted with information that contradicts our beliefs, the brain treats it as a physical threat. The amygdala, our ancient alarm system, floods the mind with stress chemicals that shut down logical thinking. We become physically incapable of processing challenging information objectively. Political neuroscience has documented this phenomenon extensively. Show conservatives and liberals identical facts about controversial topics, and their brains respond completely differently. The information does not reach neutral processing centers. Instead, it gets filtered through emotional and ideological networks that determine the interpretation before conscious analysis begins. Social media platforms exploit these neural vulnerabilities with surgical precision. The intermittent reinforcement schedule of likes and comments triggers the same brain pathways as slot machines. Users develop genuine addiction symptoms: tolerance, withdrawal, and compulsive use despite negative consequences. Yet they feel like they are simply staying connected with friends. Attention merchants understand that human consciousness has limited bandwidth. By flooding awareness with trivial information, they prevent deeper thinking from occurring. Your brain becomes so busy processing surface-level stimuli that it never has time for reflection, analysis, or genuine understanding. The default mode network, the brain system, active during rest and reflection, requires periods of boredom and silence to function properly. This network is responsible for self-awareness, moral reasoning, and long-term planning. Constant stimulation from digital devices disrupts this system, creating minds that can consume information but cannot generate wisdom. Sleep deprivation compounds these effects exponentially. When tired, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function and conscious control, becomes impaired while emotional and instinctual systems remain active. A sleep-deprived population becomes more susceptible to manipulation and less capable of rational decision-making. Research in cognitive load theory shows that humans can only handle a limited amount of mental processing at any given time. When overwhelmed with choices, information, or stimuli, people default to mental shortcuts that bypass conscious analysis. They become more likely to accept authority, follow crowds, and make decisions based on immediate emotional reactions. The paradox deepens when we consider that our brains are constantly changing based on what we focus attention on. Neuroplasticity means that thoughtless consciousness literally rewires the brain to become better at thoughtless responses and worse at conscious reflection. We are not just behaving unconsciously. We are becoming unconscious beings. This is not a design flaw. From the perspective of those who benefit from unconscious behavior, this is the perfect system. A population that feels conscious while acting unconsciously will never recognize the need to reclaim genuine awareness. History reveals a disturbing pattern. Whenever large populations slip into thoughtless consciousness, civilizations transform in ways that would have seemed unthinkable just years before. The mechanisms change, but the fundamental process remains eerily consistent across centuries and cultures. Nazi Germany provides the most studied example of this phenomenon. Ordinary citizens, teachers, doctors, shopkeepers participated in or ignored systematic atrocities, not because they were inherently evil, but because they had gradually surrendered conscious thought to collective ideology. The process happened so slowly that each step seemed reasonable within the context of the previous step. Psychologist Stanley Milgram later demonstrated this principle in controlled conditions. When authority figures instructed ordinary people to deliver what they believed were painful electric shocks to strangers, 65% complied completely. They were not sadists or psychopaths. They were normal individuals who had temporarily suspended their own moral reasoning in favor of external direction. The Milgram experiments revealed something crucial about human consciousness. Under certain conditions, people will act against their deepest values while maintaining the subjective experience of being moral, rational actors. They felt conscious and in control while following unconscious social programming. Soviet Russia perfected techniques of mass psychological manipulation that went far beyond physical control. The state did not simply suppress dissent, it made dissent psychologically impossible by controlling the categories of thought itself. Citizens learned to police their own thinking, unconsciously editing dangerous ideas before they could reach conscious awareness. The genius of totalitarian systems lies not in forcing compliance, but in making compliance feel like personal choice. People defended the very systems that oppressed them because those systems had become integrated into their sense of identity and reality. They experienced thoughtless consciousness as patriotic duty. McCarthyism in 1950s America demonstrated how quickly democratic societies could adopt authoritarian psychological patterns. Citizens reported neighbors, colleagues lost careers over political associations, and entire communities surrendered critical thinking to paranoid groupthink. Most participants genuinely believed they were protecting freedom while systematically destroying it. The Salem witch trials provide an even earlier example of collective unconsciousness masquerading as moral clarity. Rational people abandoned logic, evidence, and basic human compassion in service of shared delusions. They felt righteous and certain while participating in systematic injustice based on impossible accusations. Each historical example shares common elements. First, a crisis or threat that justifies emergency thinking. Second, the identification of scapegoats who embody the threat. Third, the gradual expansion of acceptable responses until the unthinkable becomes routine. Fourth, the psychological reward of belonging to the righteous majority. Fifth, the punishment of those who question the collective narrative. Modern consumer culture exhibits these same patterns in softer, but potentially more powerful forms. Instead of political enemies, we have lifestyle choices that define tribal membership. Instead of party loyalty, we have brand loyalty that shapes identity. Instead of state propaganda, we have marketing messages that penetrate consciousness through emotional association rather than rational argument. The advertising industry learned from political propaganda techniques developed during wartime. They discovered that effective messaging bypasses conscious resistance by associating products with unconscious desires for status, security, and belonging. People do not buy products. They buy identities, relationships, and fantasies that products symbolize. Social media has accelerated these processes beyond anything seen in previous history. Echo chambers form and solidify in weeks rather than years. Viral misinformation spreads faster than fact-checking can counter it. Emotional contagion, the unconscious mimicking of others' emotional states, happens instantly across global networks. The speed and scale of modern mass unconsciousness create new dangers. Historical examples involved gradual processes that gave some individuals time to recognize and resist collective delusions. Digital systems can shift public opinion and behavior in hours or days, before conscious reflection has time to engage. Cancel culture represents a contemporary example of this accelerated unconsciousness. Individuals can be professionally and socially destroyed based on mob judgments that form faster than due process, evidence evaluation, or proportional response. Participants feel morally justified while engaging in behaviors that would horrify them. In calmer moments, political polarization follows similar patterns. Citizens adopt complete ideological packages without conscious analysis of individual issues. They defend positions they have never personally examined simply because those positions have become markers of tribal identity. Political thinking becomes entirely unconscious while feeling deeply personal and rational. The pattern is clear. Human consciousness, when surrendered to collective influence, becomes a tool for its own subjugation. The individuals who participate feel awake, engaged, and morally superior while acting out unconscious scripts written by forces they do not understand. Recognition of these patterns is the first step toward breaking them. The internet promised to democratize information and liberate human consciousness. Instead, it has created the most sophisticated system of unconscious behavioral control in human history. What would have taken totalitarian governments decades to achieve now happens automatically through algorithms that know you better than you know yourself. Your smartphone contains more processing power than entire computer systems used to put humans on the moon. Yet this incredible technology is primarily used to capture and monetize human attention through techniques borrowed from casino design, addiction psychology, and military propaganda. The device in your pocket is simultaneously the most powerful tool for consciousness expansion and consciousness suppression ever created. Search engines do not simply find information, they shape what questions you think to ask. Autocomplete suggestions guide your curiosity in directions that serve algorithmic goals rather than your genuine interests. The information you receive has been filtered, ranked, and personalized in ways that create the illusion of comprehensive knowledge while delivering carefully curated fragments. Recommendation algorithms on streaming platforms, social media, and shopping sites create personalized reality bubbles that feel natural but are entirely artificial. The content you see has been selected not to inform or entertain you, but to maximize engagement time and advertising revenue. Your digital environment slowly molds your interests, opinions, and desires without your conscious awareness. Dating apps have gamified human relationships using the same psychological principles that make slot machines addictive. Users swipe through potential partners like products in a digital catalog, reducing complex human beings to instant visual judgments. The apps profit from keeping users engaged and single, not from helping them find meaningful relationships. Online shopping platforms use artificial intelligence to identify the precise moment when you are most vulnerable to purchasing impulses. They track your browsing patterns, search history, and even mouse movements to predict your psychological state. Prices, product placement, and marketing messages adjust in real time to exploit your unconscious weaknesses. News feeds have become psychological warfare platforms, where information is weaponized to trigger specific emotional responses. Stories are selected and presented not based on importance or accuracy, but on their ability to generate clicks, shares, and extended engagement. The result is a population that feels informed while becoming increasingly misinformed and psychologically manipulated. Video platforms use autoplay features and algorithmic recommendations to create endless content streams that bypass conscious choice entirely. Users intend to watch one video and find themselves hours later having consumed dozens of pieces of content they never consciously selected. The platform has hijacked their decision-making process completely. Social media has turned human social instincts into addiction mechanisms. The validation feedback loops of likes, comments, and shares trigger the same neural pathways involved in substance abuse. Users develop tolerance, requiring more and more engagement to achieve the same psychological satisfaction. They experience withdrawal symptoms when disconnected from their digital social networks. Influencer marketing exploits parasocial relationships, the one-sided emotional connections people form with media personalities. Followers develop genuine feelings of friendship and trust with influencers they have never met, making them extraordinarily susceptible to product recommendations and lifestyle suggestions. They follow advice from strangers who are paid to manipulate their purchasing decisions. Artificial intelligence chatbots and virtual assistants are being designed to form emotional relationships with users. These systems learn to mimic human empathy and understanding while serving corporate interests. People are beginning to confide in, seek advice from, and develop emotional dependence on algorithms designed to extract personal information and Influence behavior. The Internet of Things connects household devices to data collection networks that monitor behavior in unprecedented detail. Smart thermostats track daily routines, smart TVs record viewing habits, and smart speakers listen to private conversations. This information feeds behavioral prediction models that can influence decisions through tiny environmental adjustments that feel coincidental. Gaming platforms use variable reward schedules, achievement systems, and social pressure to create compulsive playing behaviors. Games are designed not to be fun, but to be psychologically irresistible. Players spend thousands of hours and dollars pursuing digital achievements that provide no real-world value while experiencing genuine addiction symptoms. Cryptocurrency and stock trading apps use gamification techniques to turn financial speculation into entertainment. Users receive notifications designed to create FOMO, fear of missing out, and make impulsive trading decisions based on social proof rather than financial analysis. The platforms profit from user activity, regardless of whether users make or lose money. The acceleration is exponential. Each new digital platform learns from the behavioral manipulation techniques of its predecessors and adds new innovations. Virtual reality, augmented reality, and brain-computer interfaces promise to dissolve the boundaries between external manipulation and internal experience entirely. We are witnessing the emergence of a digital panopticon where every human action feeds algorithms designed to predict and control future behavior. The prison is invisible because the prisoners have forgotten they were ever free. The price of surrendering conscious thought extends far beyond individual poor decisions. Entire societies are losing their capacity for the kind of deep, reflective thinking that built civilization itself. We are witnessing the systematic erosion of human faculties that took millennia to develop. Critical thinking requires sustained attention, patience with complexity, and tolerance for uncertainty. Modern life systematically undermines all three. When information comes in constant streams of bite-sized pieces, minds lose the ability to follow extended arguments or grapple with nuanced ideas. Complex problems get reduced to simple emotional reactions because complexity has become psychologically intolerable. Empathy requires the mental space to consider other perspectives and imagine different experiences. When consciousness is fragmented across multiple digital inputs, there is no cognitive bandwidth left for genuine consideration of how others think and feel. People become capable of surface-level social interaction, but incapable of deep human connection. Creativity emerges from boredom, reflection, and the unconscious processing of experiences during mental downtime. Constant stimulation prevents this unconscious work from occurring. Minds become excellent at consuming creative content, but terrible at generating original ideas. We mistake the ability to remix existing content for genuine creative capacity, moral. Reasoning depends on the ability to step back from immediate impulses and consider long-term consequences for oneself and others. When decision-making becomes unconscious and reactive, moral behavior becomes impossible. People can follow moral rules, but cannot engage in moral thinking. Democratic participation requires informed citizens, capable of analyzing complex policy issues and making reasoned choices about governance. When political thinking becomes unconscious tribal identification, democracy becomes a competition between marketing campaigns rather than a deliberative process about the common good. Scientific progress depends on minds capable of questioning established assumptions and following evidence wherever it leads. When thinking becomes unconscious, science becomes another form of tribal belief rather than a method for discovering truth. Research gets distorted to support predetermined conclusions rather than challenge existing understanding. Economic systems begin to function as exploitation mechanisms. rather than value creation systems when participants cannot consciously evaluate the true costs and benefits of their choices. Markets that depend on unconscious consumer behavior inevitably become predatory, extracting wealth from those least capable of rational decision-making. Education systems lose their ability to develop human potential when students and teachers operate unconsciously. Learning becomes information consumption rather than skill development. Knowledge becomes isolated facts rather than integrated understanding. Wisdom becomes impossible. Relationships suffer when people interact unconsciously. Partners, friends, and family members become sources of validation or frustration rather than fellow human beings worthy of genuine attention and care. Love becomes impossible when consciousness is absent. Mental health deteriorates when people lose touch with their own thoughts and feelings. Anxiety, depression, and addiction become epidemic when individuals cannot distinguish between their authentic experiences and the emotional responses triggered by external manipulation. Self-knowledge becomes impossible. Physical health declines when eating, sleeping, and exercise habits become unconscious responses to marketing messages rather than conscious attention to bodily needs. Bodies become vehicles for unconscious consumption rather than instruments of conscious living. Environmental destruction accelerates when consumption patterns become unconscious automatic responses rather than deliberate choices. People cannot make sustainable decisions when they are not consciously aware of the consequences of their actions. Cultural transmission breaks down when traditions, values, and wisdom cannot be consciously understood and evaluated by each generation. Societies lose their accumulated knowledge and must repeatedly learn the same lessons through painful experience. Innovation stagnates when problems are addressed through unconscious repetition of familiar solutions rather than conscious analysis of root causes and creative problem solving. Progress becomes impossible when minds cannot think beyond existing patterns. The ultimate cost is the loss of human agency itself. When consciousness becomes thoughtless, people become unconscious actors in systems they do not understand, pursuing goals they did not choose, living lives that feel somehow not quite their own. This is not inevitable. Human consciousness retains the potential for awakening even under the most sophisticated forms of manipulation. But awakening requires recognizing the depth of unconsciousness that has become normal. The question is not whether we can return to some imagined golden age of human consciousness. The question is whether we can develop new forms of conscious awareness adequate to the challenges of our technological civilization. Consciousness cannot be reclaimed through force or willpower alone. Like a muscle that has atrophied from disuse, awareness must be gradually strengthened through deliberate practice. The path back to conscious living requires understanding the difference between feeling conscious and being conscious. True consciousness begins with attention, the ability to focus awareness deliberately rather than having it captured by external stimuli. This means creating regular periods of silence where the mind can observe its own patterns without judgment or interference. Meditation, contemplation, and simple boredom become revolutionary acts in a culture designed to prevent reflection. Reading physical books from beginning to end rebuilds the capacity for sustained attention that digital consumption has eroded. The linear progression through complex arguments strengthens mental muscles that have been weakened by fragmented information consumption. Choose books that challenge your existing beliefs rather than confirm them. Questioning automatic assumptions becomes a daily practice. Before accepting any piece of information, ask, who benefits from me believing this? What evidence would change my mind? What am I not being told? These questions create psychological distance between immediate reactions and conscious responses. Conscious consumption means making deliberate choices about what enters your awareness. This includes the media you consume, the people you interact with, and the environments you inhabit. Every input shapes consciousness, so conscious beings curate their inputs carefully. Digital detox periods allow the nervous system to reset and the mind to remember what undirected attention feels like. Start with short periods, an hour, then a morning, then a full day, without digital devices. Notice the anxiety, boredom, and restlessness that arise. Then observe how these feelings gradually transform into clarity and presence. Learning to tolerate uncertainty and complexity prevents the mind from grasping at simple answers to complex questions. Practice saying, "I do not know," and sitting with the discomfort of not having immediate answers. This discomfort is where genuine thinking begins. Cultivating genuine relationships requires the practice of giving full attention to other human beings without agenda or distraction. This means listening without planning responses, asking questions out of genuine curiosity rather than social politeness, and allowing conversations to unfold naturally rather than directing them toward predetermined goals. Physical awareness. Practices like yoga, martial arts, or simply walking without digital distraction reconnect consciousness with embodied experience. The body contains wisdom that the overstimulated mind has forgotten. Creating rather than consuming develops the capacity for original thought. This might mean writing, drawing, building, gardening, or any activity that brings something new into existence rather than simply rearranging existing elements. Studying history, philosophy, and science from primary sources rather than simplified summaries builds the intellectual foundation necessary for independent thinking. Understanding how others have grappled with fundamental questions provides tools for addressing contemporary challenges. Developing financial literacy and understanding how economic systems actually function prevents unconscious participation in exploitative arrangements. Money is a tool of consciousness, but only when its mechanisms are consciously understood. The goal is not to become a perfect rational being. Humans will always be influenced by emotion, intuition, and unconscious processes. The goal is to develop enough conscious awareness to choose when to trust these influences and when to override them. Consciousness is contagious. As individuals reclaim genuine awareness, they naturally influence others through example rather than argument. Conscious beings create spaces where others can remember their own capacity for awakened attention. The work is both personal and collective. Individual consciousness cannot be sustained in a completely unconscious culture, and cultural transformation requires individuals willing to do the difficult work of waking up. We stand at a crossroads that will determine whether human consciousness evolves or becomes extinct. The forces of unconsciousness are accelerating faster than ever, but so is human awareness of these forces. The outcome depends entirely on choices being made right now by ordinary individuals who may not realize the historical significance of their decisions. Artificial intelligence will soon be capable of generating personalized content designed specifically for your psychological profile. Every video, article, and advertisement you encounter could be crafted in real time to trigger your specific vulnerabilities and desires. The choice is whether to develop conscious resistance to this manipulation or become completely unconscious. Consumers of artificial experiences, virtual and augmented reality technologies, will make the distinction between authentic and artificial experience increasingly meaningless. You will be able to live entire lifetimes in digital worlds indistinguishable from physical reality. The question is whether these technologies will expand consciousness or replace it entirely. Brain-computer interfaces will eventually allow direct manipulation of thoughts and emotions without the need for external stimuli. The ultimate choice approaches. Will you maintain sovereignty over your own mind, or will you surrender it to systems that promise convenience, pleasure, and freedom from the difficulty of conscious choice? The generation being born today will grow up in a world where unconscious living has become not just normal, but technologically enforced. Unless conscious adults create alternative models of human development, entire populations may lose the capacity for genuine thought and authentic experience. Educational systems must choose between producing compliant consumers and developing critical thinkers. Political systems must choose between manipulating unconscious voters and fostering genuine democratic participation. Economic systems must choose between exploiting unconscious consumption and serving conscious human needs. But these collective choices emerge from individual decisions. Every time you choose awareness over distraction, depth over surface, authentic relationship over digital connection, you vote for a future where human consciousness remains possible. The paradox of thoughtless consciousness will resolve in one of two directions. Either humanity will develop new forms of awareness adequate to technological civilization, or consciousness will become a quaint historical curiosity, like the ability to navigate by stars or remember epic poems. The stakes could not be higher. What is at risk is not just individual freedom or social justice, but the continuation of consciousness itself as a significant force in the universe. If humans become unconscious, intelligence will remain, but awareness, the capacity to know that you know, may disappear from Earth. This is not a prediction, but a possibility that depends entirely on choices being made now. The future remains unwritten. Consciousness remains possible, and awakening remains available to anyone willing to do the difficult work of becoming genuinely human. The paradox of thoughtless consciousness is also its solution. By understanding how consciousness can be lost, we learn how it can be reclaimed. The very awareness of unconsciousness becomes the beginning of awakening. Your consciousness is the most precious thing in the universe. What will you do with it?